Attention first responders, ready for a new challenge? You can turn your leadership skills into deliciousness by becoming a Firehouse Subs restaurant owner. First responders will receive a $100,000 cash incentive to help open their restaurant. Continue serving after service. Visit firehousesubsfranchising.com today.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnegrip.com.
All right. Hey, I want to welcome everybody in to the pod video cast. I think we need a better name than podcast now. So we're going to name it the pod vidcast, and that's how we'll introduce it every time. As always, we're going to start with our introductions. We got a really special guest today, and then we have another one in the works. And so let's start with the introductions first. My name is Todd Edwards. This is my 40th plus year in the fire service, currently in Hammond, Louisiana, getting ready to participate in the Small Town Job Town Conference. Super excited about everything they have going down here and coming up this week. And we'll let you introduce, I'll introduce my co-host here. Go ahead, Captain Rowett.
Anthony Rowett, 19th year in the fire service, 16 with Mobile Fire, and 3 years of volunteer before that. And as soon as we get done with this, I'll be getting ready to head down to Hammond, Louisiana to meet up with Small Town Job Town Fire Conference.
And our guest today, I'm going to let him introduce himself. I think it's always better to have people introduce themselves because they know exactly what they want to say or whatever they want to do. So go ahead, Chief.
Brad Bennett, Division Chief of Training, Spartanburg City Fire. That's in the upstate of South Carolina. Coming up on my 5th year as training chief. A job that I never saw myself doing, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point when we start talking about training and opportunities. But been a good run at that so far. Prior to that, worked on heavy rescue, truck, and engine. Don't know that I was a rock star at any of them, but one made me better at each of the others. So kind of a wide diversity of skill levels there. Again, I don't claim to be a pro at any of them, but being well-rounded, coming from 3 different types of tactics, definitely helps with the training division. So just became eligible my 25 years a couple weeks ago on October 3rd. I'm not looking to retire, but, now having an opportunity, if greater opportunities come about, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. But at least now I'm entering that stage of my career where more doors may open for me later on. So.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. And we asked Chief Bent to be on today for a multitude of reasons, but I definitely, I think it's very, very important we start. We're on the, couple weeks out now from the hurricane, the tragedy that really hit all around that part of North Carolina and the South Carolinas. And of course, the state of Florida, just the amount of damage, the amount of loss of life cannot be, we can't just ignore that, for this one show today. I think it's important that we also, not just all the civilian loss of life, but we lost some firefighters, and not just firefighters from the area, firefighters that came in to help with these search and rescue operations. So our hearts and our minds are with them today. And I think that the fire service will be better down the road, and we'll learn from all of these things, the good and the bad. And we are going to talk a little bit because where Chief Bent's located at in Spartanburg, they had their fair share of issues during these last few weeks. And we'll definitely get into that a little bit today. And then we have another guest going to be coming on that had his entire city flooded and then responded to the additional floods up there in the Asheville area. So we're looking forward to having him on in the next show or two as well. But let me start with this. And I think all of us go through this. I know Atlanta, it was like, every other week, it seemed like we had a new chief. But I know Spartanburg just got, not just got, but you guys have a new fire chief. And Maybe I just kind of want to talk in general about that transition when your department goes from, hey, this is the way we've been doing it. I know Mobile, their chief is fairly new. Atlanta was really good about, hey, we got a new chief, then we got an interim chief, then we got a new chief. Now we're going to bring another chief back there left. He's coming back. So there is, it really does feel like at times you're kind of hopping back and forth on each leg, trying to figure out what direction we're going into. But I want to start that question off with Chief Bennett, because for the younger guys, no matter if you're on the job for any length of time, you're going to go through 1, 2, 6 different fire chiefs through your career, and there is some challenges of that, especially when you start talking about operations, training, and all that. But I want to start with that. How's that transition going for you guys, Chief Bennett, as far as how things are transitioning and some changes you guys are starting to see?
I think it's going well. I believe it will be well once there's time for everything to evolve. So 2024 has been obviously a challenging year for us. Taking on a new administration who Chief had worked for us previously years ago prior to me going to the training office, and now we're fortunate enough to get him back as our main chief. But with having new administration, the storms that we've been undergoing, vacating our old fire station and moving into a new fire station with construction issues and things like that. So 2024 has been, I almost compare it to 2020, the year of COVID. A lot of unknowns and us adapting as we go. And I think that there's been quite a few challenges that have kind of stalled progress in certain areas. But I am hopeful for the future. I think the chief's going to do a good job for us. And as far as taking on new fire chiefs, I've had quite a few in my career at Spartanburg. And I tell, just like any organization, we have a lot of young personnel, and they hadn't necessarily experienced those transitions. And I always tell them it's a roller coaster in the fire service. It's never going to stay great. It's never going to stay bad. If it's great, you need to be planning for it to go downhill. If it's bad, it's going to go back uphill. And I've made that roller coaster ride plenty of times. And I say that to say the best thing we can do with transitions administrations, they're always going to put their same spin on things. But if we're doing our job that we're paid to do and building our programs and our operational plans based on facts and figures and solid work, and we're not making up things as we go, then honestly, there shouldn't be that huge of adjustment. Again, you're going to have these individuals that are the call makers that put their own spin on things, but I don't think that our operations necessarily change. Now, if we're making it up day to day, as we're guilty of doing sometimes, and it's probably going to be a drastic change. The other thing I can say is that you learn, you've been on a job as long as we have, is you worry about the things you can change and you don't worry about the things you can't change. And I think the downfall is, if you have great communication, it's good. If you got bad communications, guys make up their own line of communication. We get consumed and focusing our energy on things that really don't matter instead of focusing on the things that matter. And we've fell victim to that quite a bit this year, of just communications have been off a little bit with everything that's been going on. The plan has not really been communicated down as it should, and you have different groups of people that create their own plans and their own motivations and things like that, and it creates dissension in the members and things like that has to be dealt with. But I think we're going to turn out for the better in the long run. It's just we want results right now, and it's a long game. There's things that has to be implemented. There's things that Chief has to deal with that is from a prior administration that he's having to deal with city government. And then you throw on top of that, and I know both of you guys know what it's like to work for a municipal government, that multiplies things a lot. When you have other decision makers and policy holders and things that you have to answer to other than just a fire department board. There's city managers and there's HR and property procurement and every other division in the city And our fire chief answers as the emergency manager as well. So obviously he has a lot more stuff on his plate right now dealing with all this storm stuff too. So sometimes when events like that happen, it pauses things that that need to be addressed now, but they have to kind of go to the side until we deal with this. And then when people are not getting results as fast as they want, it causes a lot of issues. So those are all just growing pains we have to work through. But just understand it's not a fast process. Taking on new administration is a big thing, but it's not always a negative thing. And I think sometimes we go into it as a negative, and it puts us behind the eight ball instead of being open-minded, being confident in ourselves to explain to them why we've been doing things, but also let me hear your experience to where maybe we can mesh both of them and have to mesh both worlds. I mean, we were doing everything right before you got here, and I think communication is the biggest problem that we usually have.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that, because I don't care what the subject matter is.
Yeah.
Even during these last few weeks, I think that was one of the biggest things I kept seeing and hearing. Just war stories and horrible stories coming out of that entire area. That Chimney Rock, Asheville area was just such a lack of communication, and then that, of course, gets spun. By everybody from the media to obviously the people being affected the most, the first responders.
It still is. That's a huge problem right now with inaccurate information.
Yeah, and it's funny when you look at obviously in all the flooding that definitely was an issue, but you would think nowadays between the laptops and the computers and the emails and the cell phones that communication should be never an issue, and it always seems to be an issue. Always an issue. And let me go back. Let me go back to the same question though. I knew I've met the fire chief down there in Mobile just once briefly, and I'd worked a little bit with the retired fire chief. Now, how's that transition going for you guys? Bigger department, a little bit bigger city, obviously, for you guys, Captain.
Yeah, so kind of like you said with Atlanta, we go through a bunch of them. But in 16 years there, 4 fire chiefs and 2 interims. So I came in, that chief had been there for a long time, and we got a new mayor's administration. They got rid of him. He had been the chief of department for about 20 years. And so they had that, whether they liked it or not, they did have, it was consistent. And then it changed, and they had an interim chief. He didn't get the job. Another interim chief. He didn't get the job. We got Chief Seeley, who you had met. That he's the one that really started putting people to go out to conferences and stuff like that. He did about 3.5 years, retired, went over to another county, became a chief down at the beach. Then Chief Lamy took the job, the same thing, about 3.5 years. He retired, and now we're on to Chief Morris. But one thing we have had for consistency to not have have that rough transition is, one, we've always promoted from within, so they know everything about our job already and how we operate. But also, when Chief Lamy took over as the fire chief from Chief Seeley, Chief Lamy was one of the assistant chiefs. We have 2 assistant chiefs. We have the chief of operations and chief of staff. Lamy was the chief of staff. So he was right under Seeley and running the administration of the fire department. And then when Chief Lamy retired and Chief Morris got the job, he was the chief of staff. So he was right under Chief Lamy doing all that. It made for that transition on the administrative side. But Chief Seeley, Chief Lamy, and Chief Morris have all maintained Chief Frank as the chief of operations. So from our end on the operations side, the transition hasn't really been that much. It's kind of like, what's the pet peeve of that chief? Like, what's important to them on the small scale? The open door policy or things like that. Have engine bay doors open during the day, so you're more open to the public, things like that. But on the operational side, maintaining someone always coming up that was right under that person, they knew everything going on, but also maintaining that same operations chief, it really hasn't been a big transition for us in the field riding the rigs, because we're answering to chiefs that are answering to the same operations chief. We're still on the same playbook. Nothing changed from that perspective for us. So for the guys at our level, it hasn't really been the big change. Maybe, more community involvement or looking for ISO 1 or the accreditation stuff. It was that kind of stuff, or more business inspections and hydrant inspections than the other chief or things like that. But an operational standpoint, we haven't had that kind of that bumpy transition, because we've maintained guys that were right in that position anyway, right underneath it. They knew what was going on, but they maintain that operations chief. So I think we'll see more of that transition change in about 2.5 years when Chief Frank retires, depending on how they change who goes into that position is what's going to affect us more for us on our level than the fire chief, with the way they've promoted people to the chief of department position and maintaining that operations chief. That's probably when we'll feel it the most is when he leaves, depending on who they put in his spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think listening to both of you, and from my past experiences, both good, bad, and indifferent, we did a lot of outside the organization hiring there for a minute. We had Chief Dennis Rubin, who's now up in KC, came in, and he came from the Washington D.C. mindset. We were already pretty aggressive, and then we got even more aggressive under his watch, I think. And then we went from aggressive, kind of that firefighter, fire chief, to political fire chief. And then the political fire chief was more concerned about white shirts and epaulets and brass and uniforms. And we really lost some of our operational guidance along that way. And then that just kind of snowballed within that organization. And they still have some battles. They try, they're within the organization again, and they're still having those battles about consistency. But I think a couple of things, I definitely jotted down some notes while you guys were both speaking. As far as from a company officer level, from a chief officer level, we're with Chief Bennett over training, Captain Rowett over a company. I think one of the big things, and I heard, and I even wrote it down when Chief Bennett said it, is that bigger picture and the message we should be sending, because the fire chief's not going to see Rico and those guys very often at your firehouse, but you see them every day. So our message needs to be exactly what I think what Chief Bennett said, is that big picture vision. And that's really hard to do for firefighters sometimes, because he said it like 3 times. We want, the new chiefs here, we expect, okay, we're about to have 40 new fire trucks, all brand new nozzle, all brand new hose, we're going to have everything in the world, and not seeing what the big picture really, really is. And one of the messages I sent to always send, I still send to, when I'm doing officer development, that fire chief's got a boss too. He works for us technically. How I approach it, the fire chief works for us, but that fire chief has a bunch of bosses he's got to answer to, including all the citizens of the city, plus the mayor, plus city council, plus public safety committee. So he's juggling a lot of stuff, and then he's trying to, answer to us, try and do what's best, what he thinks is best for the organization. I think there's always that difference of seeing that, having that big picture vision of, all right, this is what we look like today. And I love what Chief Bennett said earlier about that. We're really high today. Guaranteed we're going to hit some low points. And again, for our young, for the guys listening in that only have a few years on the job, I think that's where we struggle at in the fire service when we start talking about retention too. Because, Microsoft doesn't have leadership change every week. The fire service does, between retirements and guys moving on, other opportunities. So, yeah, we have to be kind of probably more flexible than a lot of other careers out there, and when it comes to our leadership and stuff like that and all that. But the one thing I did, I jotted this down, I want to make sure I want to close with this part of it. I don't care if they hire the next 10 fire chiefs and they're all admin driven. The job itself doesn't change. There's still going to be fires. There's still going to be vehicle wrecks. There's still going to be hazmat incidents. The job doesn't change. So, sometimes how we approach the job changes based on leadership. But at the end of the day, the citizens don't care who the fire chief is. What they do care about is, your engine company pulling up and having their shit together and doing their job right. And that's really, to me, how I always kind of looked at it as we changed over to this chief, to the next chief, to this chief, back to an old chief, and all those things. So that really good on talking about that. I want to ask, this is more just definitely a Chief Bennett. Kind of tell everybody, and I don't know if everybody's even, how many people are even familiar with where you work at, Chief. And if you kind of, because I know your city's seeing some pretty substantial growth right now, and you're getting a ball, getting a baseball team, and where you're located at in the state. Just kind of an overview, how many members and those type of things.
Yeah, so City of Spartanburg currently is right around 25 square miles. We're 5 stations, 79 personnel. Um, Population, last time I looked, was around 50,000. That over doubles in the daytime due to the downtown business district and everything. Much like other cities our size, we're getting killed right now with 4 and 5 story lightweight townhomes and row homes, and that's our big deal right now. Have some mid-rise buildings. Our tallest is 19 stories, multiple 12, 13-story buildings. So we have a good little mix of single-family old mill villages to mid-rise buildings, things like that. So we're about 30 minutes from the North Carolina line, about an hour from Charlotte, about 2.5 hours from Atlanta, 26 and 85 cross right in Spartanburg. We are named the hub city for the railroad system because CSX and Norfolk Southern also crossing in Spartanburg City. So there's a lot of history in our town as far as railroads and textile mills and grain district and things like that. One of the larger counties in Spartanburg. Yeah, so that's
Spartanburg. So
Spartanburg County, yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you face in your position trying to oversee? I mean, I know it's not like we're talking thousands of firefighters, but there's always challenges when you talk about the training aspects. Obviously, with the railroad, you've got to worry about hazardous materials. You have an influx of people in your city every day. I know weekends you guys have a lot of downtown events. I've been to Spartanburg, and I recommend go check out the downtown area. It's a very cool, very unique one of the more unique downtown areas I've been to when it comes to what is all down there. Had the pleasure of walking all of downtown last year or the year before that, and found a basement with a full bowling alley in it over top of underneath a bar, and so a lot of little cool things. But what are some of the training challenges you face over being a district chief of a department?
So obviously being multifunctional agency, no different than any other municipality, we've taken on everything that the fire department can take on. We just recently, we held out as long as we could, but we just recently started running medical. So that's been a new thing is that, we've always been trained in medical, but now trying to amp that up and be professional about it, along with technical rescue services, along with fire, along with hazmat, along with active shooter. So one of the biggest challenges for me coming in, and it's been over the last 5 years, how do you get all that done in 12 months? You throw in holidays, you do all this other stuff. So I think some of the challenge I face is the culture change of company-based training. So when I was coming up, the company officer, all they had to worry about with training was what time are we supposed to be at training. Well, so when I came in, we implemented as a training division, more company-based training, not all together, but making that captain, making that lieutenant be an instructor like NFPA says you're supposed to, and doing company drills and stuff like that. So trying to base a lot of those fire skills in the house, at their station, in their first due district, because the guys on my job will tell you they get tired of hearing it all the time. Every time we get together, I say, please pay attention to these buildings. Please pay attention to these buildings because they're killing us with. I mean, we're figuring out how to build mid-rise buildings up to almost 10 stories, out of 2x4s and plywood and everything else. Pay attention to what's going on your first due. But then me utilizing the training division to do our quarterly burn scenarios, try to keep up with our hazmat and our technical rescue, which this year has been difficult at best, if near impossible, with everything else going on. And at some point, things are going to lack. And now the EMS stuff has come up because just like everyone else, our EMS system is taking a hit too, just like everybody else. So who's going to step up and try to supplement that? The fire service. So, and it's just, it seems like one year after another, whether it be COVID, whether it be now hurricanes in the mountains, whether it be, new EMS calls, it's just, there's something new every year added that we're supposed to train on in 12 months time. So how do you sit down and put all this on paper and figure out when you're going to do it all. Plus run fires and plus do this and plus have everything else that comes up. It's difficult at best to try to be good at it. Historically, there's training officers out there that come in and they put out something just to check the boxes and stuff like that. But we try to build our training division where we don't do that. We try to, what is our priorities? What is our most important things to train on at this point, and then try to push out other things to the company level as much as possible. And I get a lot of pushback from some of that because some of the guys, especially who've been on the job for a long time, the training officer is supposed to be in front of everybody every day of the week, giving you a PowerPoint, telling you about something. In reality, it's just not possible to do that, on top of everything. So, and then when you add in my position, you have other administrative duties you have to take care of too. You have all the aid meetings you have to go to, the chiefs meetings. I serve on the city's accident review board, so all the wrecks in the city, I have to be a part of that. So there's other things that other guys don't see on the back end. So the hard part is how do you be effective with your delivery, your training, but also get all your stuff done.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you kind of broke down. I love one of the things that you said there. I'm going to bounce this right to Row here in a second. Even with a 5-station fire department, and you start adding, I was listening. I was kind of jotting real quick. EMS now EMS. Welcome to the party, Spartanburg.
Thanks.
EMS, hazmat, firefighting. We should probably be doing some training on. Tech rescue, natural disasters now that we're dealing with, and it's this layer after layer after layer after layer. And I think that we sometimes, because we're so good, and I heard this, and I wish I could tell you who said this to me years ago. At some point, the fire services got to start pushing back and saying that's all we can do for this number of personnel, but we'll take on 5 more projects and not add 1 more engine or 1 more body to my rig. But EMS, come on, we got it. We can do that. Oh, more tech? No problem. We got that. We can do that. Tree clearing and garbage pickup? Shit, bring it. We can take care of that too. So eventually the fire service is going to have to make a stand on some of these things, or departments are going to have to start making a stand when it comes to all these things. I want to bounce that same, obviously, and I love when we have the 2 different types of departments on the show where we have 5-station and we have a bigger city with Mobile. How you guys are approaching pretty much everything Chief Bennett just talked about. How are you guys breaking down this massive pile of basically training requirements that we're under and able to maintain all that without it being what a lot of places do? Because I know of a lot of places that just do the old fancy, oh, yeah, they did all that, and knowing they had to stretch 1 stick of hose in 6 months, but they documented 8,000 feet of it. But how's Mobile approaching that? Maybe somebody can listen and go, man, that's a great idea, or I see what Chief Bennett's saying. And, where you guys are at within Mobile, Captain?
So kind of like Chief Bennett said, when I first came in, it was really, depending on the officer, it was really department driven. If you went to the academy for a drill, or the chief brought you down there on the weekend for his drills he was required to do with his companies, and then depending on who your officer was, And I purposely went to a guy because I hired on so young that was known to train. I didn't want to just sit around the firehouse, and that's what I know. So, but we've become more company officer driven with it. We don't do as many classes. Just bring a company down and do it at the training academy as we used to. They're inundated with nonstop recruit classes. Our training staff they are to the max on time. We're so young right now. We're dealing with the turnover of just the fire service, and we've hit a point where the city had grown and the fire department grew and started hiring bigger classes, and those guys are all getting their 30 years. So now we're having more retirements per year than we're used to as well. So we're dealing with all that, and they're constantly having 30, 40, 50 recruits in the academy going through. So it's fallen on the captains to do more, which I personally prefer because I know the strengths and weaknesses of my guys. So I know where we can work on this and it should go pretty easy and it's just a refresher. And I know where we really need to work on and get better. And we can train in our district where they're going to be first due, which to me always brings down anxiety level when you make the one that's not bread and butter. When you go to the nursing home and like what we do, we made an apartment book. It's just a 3-ring binder, and we have a lot of. I like it because it's history. Guys that drew these out in the 70s and 80s, these buildings, and drew every detail about them, and we kept them. And I have them in a binder, and if they're still the same, I use their drawings. If not, we drew our own. And we try to sit down after dinner and just pick a building. We put some stuff on the board, draw the building, write some questions out, and everyone sits down with a piece of paper and individually answers them and sees what they can remember. And like, so for the building we did yesterday, it's a 3-story. We call it a nursing home on taxpayer dollars. Really just, it's independent living, but we go there enough. But if those are the ones like we talked about last time, Todd, the ones you go to all the time, you should know. Do I need them to know every single detail of the building? Oh, the odd numbered apartments are on the right hand side of the hallway or the left. No, but if they can remember the numbering starts on the short wing, because it's got 2 wings, a short side and a long side. If they can remember the numbers start there, and it's 1 through 6 is in the short side, 7 through 16 in the long side, and from the floor below, it's a 3-lane stretch for the short side to cover every apartment, 5-lane stretch on the long side to cover every apartment. We should be pretty good.
Yeah, I like the company level. I'm all about and 100% believe that the training should be at the company boss level. And it really should be a requirement to be a lieutenant or be a captain, depending on how your system is set up. So I'm going to bounce back a real chief question now. What do we do, or what are your ideas, Chief, when you have that captain or lieutenant who is just no good at training? Not everybody's cut out to teach. So do you guys have something in place for that to assist those guys, or they're just like, yeah, figure it out?
No, so we do. And I've taken on a training captain in the last 2 years, which has been outstanding for my office. And he's done an exceptional job with some of that company officer development. We worked real hard in the last few years to build development programs for the acting company officer, for the company officer, where the job that we came up in was, hey, we're having a lieutenant's test. Okay, you passed. Good luck. Go learn how to be an officer. And so through being a young organization like everybody else, some looked at it as a handicap, and there are handicaps to that, but there's also great opportunities. So we saw the great opportunities. Well, hey, it's on us to teach these kids how to be a company boss. So now our acting company officer program has done exceptionally well, thanks to Stephen Elder, our training captain. I got to give props to him because he's done most of the legwork on that. We have an officer training academy, and hopefully at some point we're going to build a battalion academy to try to get those guys ready for that. But we do have, we do try to recognize those instances with those problem bosses. And that's where Captain Elder specifically or myself will reach out and have a little conversation with them saying, hey, this is what we noticed. This is really where we need to be at. Do you need help? Blah, blah, blah. And then based on that, usually that'll fix a lot of it. If it don't, then we get a little bit more aggressive with it until the point where we can fix that. And then at some point, I hope guys have an administration, and we're working on that, hopefully, that brings that level of accountability to where, hey, you have had plenty of opportunities. We have invested in you, but you're not putting out what we need at this level. So what do we do about it? And that becomes an operations chief level or something like that, which, in return causes more work for them. And sometimes they don't like that. But honestly, that's what their primary responsibility is to make sure we're all doing what we're supposed to throughout the umbrella, and holding us accountable and being honest with us when we're not, operating to par. So yeah, that's kind of how we do. We have career development programs for these individuals, but then we also try to monitor, especially at a newer level as an officer, as they're learning. We listen to the radio, we radio traffic. We've even pulled radio traffic and sat down with them and say, hey, I want you to hear what you did here and what you did there. Again, that's where my captain's been outstanding at that part. He's a lot more tech savvy than I am. But I think the last couple of years we've become, we've invested a lot more in our officer development than in years past. And I think going all the way back to what we talked about the whole fire chief thing is, if you have a good operations chief, you have good battalions, you have good company bosses, and everybody's doing their jobs and holding everyone accountable and communicating with one another, it shouldn't be that big a change other than uniforms or ISO or any of that stuff when a fire chief comes in. Fire chief should be able to take care of, city administrative stuff, and we should still be operating status quo if everyone's doing their job. We have suffered, so that's kind of what we've tried to do is invest heavily in our officers, because I've seen people's careers either be really good or really bad based on luck of the draw, from company officers. I know kids that would still be in the fire service today if they hadn't drew a shit straw and got a bad company boss.
Yeah,
and I think we can prevent some of that if we hold these guys accountable. You're the one that wanted to get promoted. Now you should be held to this standard, and it's our job to hold you to that standard.
Yeah,
I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the kids that could probably be jam up firefighters that are not in the fire service anymore because they had a crappy company boss.
Yeah, and I think that really, not to go way down this rabbit hole, which would be really easy to do on that subject matter. But if we don't set everybody, I know that's a big topic in the fire service about retention. And I know money plays a role. I get that. I truly get that.
Money's temporary though.
Exactly. And that's so true. But if we don't build retention within the organization first and start setting the bar a lot higher than, hey, you passed the written exam, and because that's how I came up. You passed the test and you were promoted the next day. I was very, very blessed to have a very senior captain that I came up under and got to learn a lot. I mean, a lot from him about how to be an officer, what to do, what not to do. And him even being the first one to say, man, boys, I really screwed the pooch here on this, or I shouldn't have said that to the fire chief that just walked in my firehouse. So it was really a great learning experience, and we've lost some of that over the years. But I think retention should start within the organization. And as we bring new people in, we've already got the standard set that they know coming in, they're not going to a crappy boss. They may go to a slow firehouse, but they're going to have a damn good boss there at that firehouse with them. And that's going to keep them on the job a lot longer. I didn't have, and I really, this is for people who are downloading, people who are going to be listening and watching. Typically, I do this big agenda thing. I just didn't have time with everything we have going on this week with these conferences. I know everybody's just been the Southeastern United States has just been a absolute melee of people and melee of issues. And, of course, even Metro Atlanta, we had some of the hurricane issues, nothing like the Carolinas, but we had some hurricane issues. And then we followed that up with I could smell chlorine at my house for 3 days, and that was like 55 miles from my house from the large chemical fire, which will be a very interesting story down the road, I think, when we get all the details of that mess out there from the company standpoint and the fire department standpoint. So there's been just an immense amount of things going on, but I really wanted to, I do want to take this opportunity, even though Spartanburg didn't get drilled like Asheville did, and like Chimney Rock and just hundreds of these little small towns that just were wiped off the face of the earth. How did you guys respond? And did you guys send anybody outside the city, or did you guys have to keep all your resources inside?
So probably for the 24 hours, we had to keep our resources in, even mutual aid response to our mutual aid partners. We wasn't sending anybody out. And it kind of was, kind of a weird situation. And again, our damage, even though we had city, county, statewide damage, nothing compared to Western North Carolina. The devastation that they have just 30, 45 minutes north of us is unbelievable. So not to downplay that and act like we had anything like Western North Carolina, but we did have a lot of damage. We've had tornadoes in the recent past where you had isolated areas of damage, and this was just citywide. Trees and houses. We had all of our resources deployed. We had recalled staff. We had up staff, spare rigs. Even though, and I'll get to that in a second, I think we failed on an administrative level. We did not prepare like we should have, which I don't know that anybody did, because they didn't expect what we were getting. But at one point, we had all of our resources deployed because we had so many trees and houses, multiple houses where people were actually trapped under the trees. So So the guys on the line crushed it. They went out, and we even had them in situations they probably shouldn't even been in once the storm was there. And it's stuff that I hope we're going to debrief as administration, because I learned a lot. We should have learned a lot from that. And maybe it is a 100-year storm. Maybe it happens next summer. And that's why everybody's saying, well, that's a 100-year storm. We won't ever see that again. I don't know if you paid attention to the weather patterns over the last couple of years, but I think anything's possible. We may have a blizzard, in a few weeks. As a matter of fact, the higher elevations of Western North Carolina got like 3 inches of snow this morning up around Maggie Valley. So not only are they dealing with that, now they got snow on the ground too. So, but yeah, we were pretty tapped out with what we had within that amount of time on that Friday. And then after we did windshield assessments, all that, and realized how much damage was. Our public works is still working to try to, I think we've got all the streets back open. I believe now finally everyone in Spartanburg County's power is restored. That's another thing that we hadn't gone through in a long time. The last time I can remember, a couple of weeks without power was the ice storms we had back in like 02, 05. So it was a shock to everybody in our area. We're used to bad thunderstorms and things like that, but nothing to compare to what we went through there. I don't know if that answers your whole question.
Yeah, no, it really does. But it's kind of leading me where I want to take this particular subject is about going back to what you were saying earlier about we have this layer and we have this layer and we have this layer that we're all trying to train on. But natural disaster preparation, I think, is a shortcoming for most organizations.
Yes.
Probably Florida, one, their state-led government with their governor, they are way ahead of the curve than most places are in the country. They truly are. They already have, I know a friend of mine was Clark County, Nevada. Their whole team was en route before the storm even hit. They'd already called in those resources. So I think those are some really, really good lessons. And I hope that down the road, as dust starts to settle, that fire engineering and some of these guys will really look at this. I think it'd be a great training to produce for FDIC. How do we prepare, especially like you said, for that 100-year storm? I want to throw that question to Captain Rowett, being in Mobile, right there on the coast. They've gone through some hurricanes. How prepared would it be if, like, you guys took that direct hit at a Category 3 or 4 storm if it happened like next Friday?
Yeah. So, because we've been through them, and every summer comes, we know there's a chance we're getting them. We have some very detailed procedures of how we are going to operate for storms like that. How many extra rigs we're going to put in service, how we're going to get people back and call in extra people, at what point we're going to call in extra people, where we're going to move companies to, because these areas of the cities are known to flood, and we're going to relocate people, all this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to say we're the best prepared, but we do have a very good plan for it. I've been on duty when hurricanes came through. Sally, that hit over in Gulf Shores, Pensacola area, we were on duty for that. We didn't take a huge beating like they did, but we're close enough. We took a beating. We were on duty that night, and the winds were bad, not quite like them, but we had very, very high registered winds. Probably, according to our SOGs, should have shut down service, but we didn't. We just kept responding. We had a lot of fires going on in the city. A lot of people trapped in trees falling in houses. I think that night I don't remember how many runs it was. We never stopped, but I know our company alone had 2 house fires, 2 technical rescues, and then just everything else going on. And that's not including all the water rescue stuff where they're just stranded and you're going, where the technical rescue team was having to roll out to help get people. And then, like you said, with Florida, we're in the same boat. They call for resources early. Our team was heading to Florida before that thing hit. State of Washington's team was at our Firehouse getting some supplies before that thing hit, on their way down there to stage and be ready. Because I got to see Josh Materi. He was they stayed in the hotel in our run area, so he called, "Hey man, you working? Come see me. I ain't seen you in a while." So we rode down there, and then we helped him out with some supply stuff. And it's just, I guess because we're used to it, we know every year we got to be ready for hurricane season. It's especially for us, August, September, October, we know that's when it's usually the busiest for us. It's ramped up. Every year when we hit June 1st, hurricane season officially starts. As a station on our shift, and most companies do it, we sit down with all the guys and go over that SOG. Hey, at what point do you have to call in and make yourself available? At what point are all leaves canceled? Which for us is when it goes to a hurricane warning, everything's closed. All your leave is canceled unless you're already out of town, you can't get back. You have to call the station, report to the on-duty officer. Hey, report me, Anthony Rowett is available. They call the chief. This way they can start calling people in and putting extra companies in service. We put additional people on every rig. So we do that. We put extra companies in service. We'll call in people, and we additional staffing on rigs as well. A lot of times they'll ride 5 instead of 4, and there's no acting up. No one can act up and drive. No driver can act up and be a boss. You got to have a paid driver. You got to have a paid officer on duty in every company, so that you're not asking them to do something they're not prepared for in that situation. And all those were in place before that policy hasn't really changed in the 16 years I've been there. It's been a pretty good policy. I mean, they've taken their hits before in the city. And the hurricanes I've worked through were, I was off and came back, and how the guys operated during the storm is as smooth as you could ask. You know what I mean? I mean, it's going to have its bumps in the road. And, I mean, they've got the policy in there where we're going to shut down. And, if it's above 65 miles an hour, we're going to shut down our services and all that. And it's still kind of there, like fire comes in down the street, you know what those guys are going to do. And it's kind of spelled out to still be able to go do what they're going to do. And they're not going to take someone away. But I think a lot of that just comes from the experience with it and the constant threat. We know every year we're going to spend 4 or 5 months under the threat of modern hurricanes. Is it up until a few days beforehand? We don't know if it's going to, Tampa, or if it's coming here. If it's going to Texas, Louisiana, it's coming here. So everyone that looks like it's going in that Gulf, we're getting everything ramped up and ready, which probably also makes our guys a little more useful to deploy early and be ready, because they know what to expect. They know exactly what it's going to be like. But then, like North Carolina, I talked to our assistant chief that went, and he did command for our team up there. And Milton down in Florida, he went to both of them. And he just said that the North Carolina of everything they've gone to, was a different world, just a different story, because it wasn't just the hurricane we're used to going to. It was the landslides and mudslides and the devastation and just loss of life that created, but you can't stop it, And they were in that Chimney Rock area is where they worked. They didn't work Chimney Rock. Chimney Rock was kind of the edge of where they were. They were in, I think it's called Guerin Creek. But we sent a team up there, and then we sent a bigger team to Florida. But Alabama Task Force 1 has a lot of members that aren't a member of our job, but Mobile Fire operates the task force. So we're the hub of it, I guess would be the word. And the resources are by us, and we're the bulk of the personnel. So our guys, they want to go help with stuff like that, because I think a lot of it's just it hits home. They've lived through it. Somebody was coming to help. So.
And I think one of the things, just as we're bouncing this, and I was actually and I think what's unique for Florida, the Gulf Coast of Texas, even parts of the Gulf Coast of Georgia, very rare that happens there. But for that hub in the Gulf of Mexico, at least typically you get 3 or 4 day warnings that you can amp up, where the Carolinas, I don't think anybody predicted the amount, because the way the weather was being predicted, the Georgia region was supposed to get a lot more rain than that Asheville region was. And that's not how it ended up spinning out either. I think the challenge, though, when we talk about natural disasters, knowing something's coming, you can be prepared. But there's no way for that fire chief of Asheville to have any way to amp up and go, hey, guys, we're going to staff this. We're going to move our trucks. There was no way for those guys to know that. And the mere fact that the job they did during, and they're going to be doing for weeks and months, probably years, is absolutely amazing. And hopefully down the road, people that were part of that initial will be able to share some of those experiences. And then you have the other departments where there's a lot of volunteers. I read a story yesterday about a volunteer firefighter killed up there just trying to help his neighbors and, try and do, his part as a community. So I think those are some of those, there's going to be a million stories, and we're only going to hear a very, very small percentage of what those guys have been doing up there. And I think I'm not trying to keep coming around to this, but for the areas like Atlanta, typically Spartanburg, ours are day of warnings. There's not time to amp up to, it's going to be a lot of bad thunderstorms today. Let's amp up 2 cut trucks, and we were prepared before there was a hurricane, I forget name and year, they came directly through the city of Atlanta. It was still almost a Cat 1 time it hit the city, but we had amped up trucks and we had more cut teams, and we were somewhat prepared for that. But the tornado was just a normal summer day, and that tornado literally went right through downtown Atlanta, wiping out just ungodly amounts of things. Amazingly, only 1 person was killed. But we were not prepared. And one of the biggest things that we found, and I don't know if, how you don't hear about it because nothing usually happens, gas leaks. We had gas leaks all over the city, from trees uprooting, trees falling on gas meters. And typically we would sit out there with them. We had to literally leave like a guy there sometimes. And because the power, Georgia Gas, Atlanta Gas Company was tapped. They had nobody to send to these massive gas leaks that were going all over the city, So other little challenges there that, again, when you talk about training and layers, the natural disasters is probably one of the more challenging things because, it's hard to get prepared for an ice storm in Spartanburg and in Atlanta, Georgia, and Mobile, Alabama, Houston, Texas. When they had it, they just got destroyed by that. I mean, it doesn't last long, but it's 2 solid days of what the hell are we going to do next when your firehouses are out of power, and a lot of little things like that go a long way. And I think I want to make sure that I've seen some little stories and stuff that, I would caution firefighters throughout the country, know the story before you speak about a story. I'm always amazed how guys think they got to put in their 2 cents. I'm blown away of what those guys have been doing and will continue to do. I can't even imagine. And I think the part of that we forget because we're immersed, those guys had homes that were destroyed and washed away too. They have a wife and 2 kids sitting home without power, food, water, running water, and they're still out there doing the job. And I think that's part of that's part of the fire service story. I think gets so forgotten is what the wife and kid at home, why we're at work running up and down the street to fires and doing our job. It's definitely something I think we need to do a better job in the fire service is talking about that side of the fire service. We're great to say, man, that guy pulled 6 babies out of a 4-story house. It was awesome. But man, what they're going to go through and their families, and that's a long term thing when we talk about this type of disaster that we forget about because we're so immersed in everything, and the news media forgets.
Hit the nail on the head with 2 separate things, Todd. Is with natural disasters, it's such a big topic because, like, for us, we focus on hurricanes. That's what we get. And you brought it up because I talk about it with Sammy all the time, being in Kansas, and guys out in the Dallas area in Oklahoma. We get tornadoes, but not like they do.
Not like they get.
Not as much as and usually because it's coming off the water, they're not as big usually. And I was telling them, man, at least we know it's coming. I get my kids out of town. It didn't just pop up usually. I wasn't. You go to sleep and it was there. But I think the other thing you said, and that was one of the things when Sally hit. And I know you guys know all about Sally because Kurt, Pensacola, and it went into that area and Gulf Shores. Our fire chief had retired and went and became the chief of Gulf Shores, and then it hit. And our next chief, when he made requests to the state for resources, he sent a company down. It was our company every day. Our job was to go down there and ride the rigs for them so they could go home and be with their families and make sure.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding.
I think it's what you're talking about, that community of if someone didn't do that, they were going to keep riding the rigs. That coming together of what the fire service can and typically does for itself is, hey, we can handle it. We'll send you 4 guys down there to staff your rigs, and let your guys go check on their family or get their house.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's just huge and outstanding on his part to have that, in his mental makeup to think about that. And this kind of leads me into the last thing I really want Chief Bennett to kind of speak on. I know he was out of power for a week.
Yes. Yeah, we got ours back 7 or 8 days, but we had some that were down 10, 11 days.
Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is that obviously your family was affected by that. But what obviously we didn't go into this, and it's not really part of it, but it's something I thought was interesting as I was jotting down notes this whole time. Chief Bennett comes from, he's married, but he's married into the service as well. Kind of share how that works. That you're for people obviously don't know Chief Bennett. His wife is with she's way up in the food chain, and is go ahead. You tell us what your wife does, because it's way more important than what you do.
My wife is a first sergeant of the violent crime unit for Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office, so she pretty much manages all the violent crimes homicide investigators. So she's a very busy lady. We have learned how to make it work over the last 10 years. I think we balance things fairly well because I'm on call a lot as a duty chief responding back to the city. She's on call all the time, especially now being a supervisor. So based on how dumb people are, that day or night depends on how long she gets to stay away. So it is it's taxing on us at times, but I think we understand, and it makes it easier on me sometimes too. I don't live that life to where I have to explain to my wife what I do. We're a wife that has no clue about the fire service or emergency responses. I don't usually have that life, and it's the same with her. So if she has to go to work, she has to go to work. If I have to go to work, I have to go to work. So there's good sides to it, but it's also we've been days before not seeing each other because either she's working a homicide, and then as soon as she gets done, she rolls in at 4 a.m. She's in the bed, and I'm at a structure fire back at the city or whatever. Luckily, she gets to travel with me some, so she gets to go to Pensacola with me. She's got her good circle of friends with the Fire Life group and all that. So it's we've built a pretty good thing out of it. A lot of good experiences there.
Yeah, and I think we may have had other guests, but I think that you guys are both public servants in two different areas with the fire and the police side of things. I think it's interesting, like going through the natural disasters or going through all the and Spartanburg's a changing, growing, different city, and you're both kind of working your way through and living that. But I thought it was interesting to kind of share that with everybody who's going to be listening and downloading.
So it was interesting during the natural disaster. Again, it was something new for them because obviously 24 hours after the fact now there's no power, there's no gas. So now we've only lost power for 24 hours and people are ready to eat each other. So they're fighting and pulling guns on each other at gas pumps and stuff. So now they're taking some of these VCs and they're posting them up at all these gas stations that are opening up to make sure people don't kill one another for a 5-gallon can of gas. And I'm like, hey, it's bad, but it's only been 24 hours. We hadn't been without gas for 2 weeks. It's just been 24 hours. So it was a huge dynamic to where, I'm trying to help run one end, and now she's out here trying to keep law and order because people are losing their minds because we lost all of our conveniences. Nobody's in danger; they're just inconvenienced, and now everybody's mad. So it was a fun few days. It was quite the then on top of that, having the elderly in-laws and elderly parents, and about to have a grandson, maybe even Sunday night. So hopefully, I fly back from Arkansas before she has. Rocker James. But when I'm not at work now, I'm running around trying to keep generators going at their houses, to keep medications cool and keep from losing their meat and all that stuff. So, it's like you said, it goes back to the guys that they have lives too. So I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to take care of everybody. But when I do get to break away, I'm working another shift trying to take care of my family, and I think administratively, I wanted to bring that up because I like what Rose said about, obviously y'all have a lot more experience with that. So you should have a book that spells out black and white what you do. And I think that's some of the things we failed at is making sure the guys are taken care of. Is your family safe? Things like that. So do you have a policy saying we're going to make sure these guys' family is taken care of? Do we need to house them during the storm? Stuff like, okay, now the storm's over with, nothing's open. how do we feed the crews? So now we're scrambling, trying to stock up food and proteins and stuff to try to grill out and stuff like that. All stuff we could have probably planned on the front end, but the small things that become big issues after the dust settles that we didn't think about. So the next few days was, how do we get these resources in here so the guys can keep working?
Yeah.
How do we run our operational periods to where we don't tax out our guys and we keep our guys fresh and free these guys up so they can go home and check on their families and their houses and stuff like that. I mean, we had guys that didn't even know what their houses looked like. Maybe they had a tree in their living room. They didn't even know it yet because they hadn't got home. So I think administratively, those are the things you have to be concerned with on the back end, is ready to when everybody takes a breath and the dust settles, now how do we take care of everybody? How do we still get our work done and organize it? But how do we make sure the guys, their families, the crew's working and everybody's safe and taken care of? And I hope that we're going to learn from that. We should. We made a lot of mistakes.
It is probably the most overlooked aspect in the American Fire Service. In the height of the emergency, the height of the storm, the tornado, the fire, whatever it is, it's very focused on that issue at that point. But I love the point that you brought up. What now? The next 24, the next 48, the next 72. And then not only just, the guys on duty, but that guy's worried about his 6-month-old and his wife, or like you said, elderly father who may or may not live with you, that, needs oxygen, and I think those are some of those stories that we'll hear about where we missed a lot of things. Again, the initial impact, it's big news and it's a lot of resources hopefully coming in. And then it's the long term, because guys that have lost their homes, guys have been riding trucks for 48 hours, cutting trees off everybody else's house. Now they're going to spend the next 2 days at their own home trying to figure out how they're going to get into their garage because there's a tree on top of it. And we don't think about.
And probably got to be back at work pretty soon.
Yeah.
They probably don't have that much time off. Their next operational period's in like 12 hours. So, or whatever.
And they're exhausted. And they're dead tired at the same time. But, when we have those, again, that was, pray to God that never happens again to that degree. But any kind of disaster like that, whether it is a tornado that wipes out, half your town, or a major ice storm, and that was a big one in Atlanta, the biggest one we had. I knew it was big when they hired me overtime as a battalion chief. I knew it was bad when they were actually going to pay us to stay overtime. But my home, I had two. My kids were still there, and my wife's there, and there's no power, and don't know when there's going to be power, and we had stocked up some perishable foods, but. And that's a really bad scenario because there's no way for me to go home at that point. So these are challenges that I think I love that I hope that you guys do that debrief and we look at, or the fire service as a whole starts looking at. We're so good at taking care of everybody else, but we always forget about taking care of each other and taking care of our guys who are out there taking care of everybody. And that's something that really needs to be looked at, addressed. Housing, I think, is a huge point where, your house, your wife and kids are homeless right now and you're stuck on a fire truck.
Yeah.
It's really hard to focus on doing your job when you're worried about that at the same time.
That's right.
Too.
Yeah. And that's something we don't ever think about, until after the fact.
Yeah, no, not at all. So, Chief Bennett, is being your first time on with us, we always give guests first right here, and any little closing remarks or statements you'd like to give us, and then Rowett, and I'll make a couple of quick comments. I do want you to talk about this, though, if you can, off the top of your head. You do have a little training event coming up in 2025 that's open to the general population. If you could maybe talk on that and tell us a little bit about that, that'd be fantastic, sir.
Absolutely. First, thank both of you for having me on. It's the first time I've got to do anything like this, so it's pretty cool, and I appreciate the thought. Todd's right. We do a spring conference every year in Spartanburg, usually about the last week in May. This next year, it will be May 20th through the 22nd. We had to postpone last year due to the station move and all kind of other things, so we didn't have one last year, but Todd and Chief Turpak were in the year before that. This year, we're trying to amp it up a little bit. Todd will be back. We'll have Chief Clyde Gordon, we'll have Ray McCormick, we'll have Kyle Romagus, and then we're going to close it out with functional fire company, Scott Thompson. So glad to finally get him in. For those of you who have not seen that program, it's fantastic. And in order to book Chief Thompson, you got to do it well in advance. And I was lucky enough to have one day available for him. So I'm super looking forward to this lineup of guys. I'm fortunate enough to be able to be in the circle of this group and gain so much knowledge from these guys and what super human beings they are. So I'm glad for them all to get to come to my city and spend a week with me. So May 20th through 22nd, if you're free, come to Spartanburg, please, and enjoy some good training with us.
Will your baseball team be up and running by then?
Yeah, so that is the fastest project I've ever seen get completed in the city of Spartanburg, but they're supposed to throw first pitch in April. So
Wow.
even I'm pretty sure they worked during the hurricane on the baseball stadium. I never saw them quit working. I know the next morning they were still working. So first pitch is almost there. Other than the grass, it's almost done. So
Wow.
right downtown. So it should be pretty cool. AA ball, Spartanburgers. That's our baseball team. So
Say that again. It's going to be what?
the Spartanburgers.
They really ran out of ideas, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, we have the Beacon, so it's like a legendary burger place. So I guess that's where we got the Spartanburgers from.
Is the logo going to be a hamburger?
It actually is. You can Google it. It's online. You can already buy merch. No, you can buy merch. You can show up with a baseball jersey.
Oh, I'm getting me a Spartanburger t-shirt when I'm in town next. That's awesome. Can't row in. I know it's going to be hard to top Spartanburger.
Yeah, we don't have a Spartanburger, but my final comments of it would be kind of go back to what we talked about earlier, and just to repeat something Chief Bennett said of know your buildings. I think that's really what it comes down to. You got to know your first due area to really be effective, because when you're first due, you're going to set the tone for everybody else. And to me, that starts with knowing your streets, knowing your water supply, knowing your building. So.
Awesome, man. I'm going to kind of close out where we're wrapping this up. To everybody who listens to this or downloads and watches, whatever the case may be, man, don't forget about our brothers and our sisters and our brothers and sisters and their families. We have a little link with a lot of guys that we work together with down at some of the big conferences, and I was checking on them. They're giving us updates. Some guys that I know live down there in Florida that I've worked with, and you keep looking out for these guys, especially up in that other area where Chimney Rock and Asheville, and not just isolating them, but all those towns and cities that were decimated by these hurricanes. And remember, those guys are going to be going through it for a long, long time. So if you see an opportunity to donate, if you see an opportunity to help any of those folks out, don't hesitate to do that. So we appreciate it as always. Looking forward to the next couple of days here in Hammond, Louisiana. Looking forward to seeing you, bro. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night at Atlanta Airport, Chief Bennett, because we're going to a different little event together after this. So kind of a weird, busy weekend, but I'll be good. And a lot of good information coming, a lot of good fellowship. I'm looking forward to all that. So everybody listening, you've had a good, we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Attention first responders, ready for a new challenge? You can turn your leadership skills into deliciousness by becoming a Firehouse Subs restaurant owner. First responders will receive a $100,000 cash incentive to help open their restaurant. Continue serving after service. Visit firehousesubsfranchising.com today.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnegrip.com.